Hello and welcome to Politics 2.0, a summer political reveal. On this program, we interview ministers and politicians about the current economic crisis. And joining us on today's show, we have Honorable Member of Parliament, Mr. Champika Ranawaka. He is the Member of Parliament from the Colombo district of the Samagi Jana Balabegya Party. He was the Cabinet Minister of Megapolis and Western Development, as well as the Minister of Environment and Natural Resources, Power and Energy and Technology, Research and Atomic Energy. Mr. Champika Ranawaka, we want to extend to you the warmest of welcomes. Thank you so much for joining us today on Relax Radio.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So to start off with, can I ask you to give us a brief introduction to yourself and your party and your stance on the economic crisis in Sri Lanka?
Actually, I'm trained as an engineer. I was passed out from University of Moratu as an electrical engineer. Thereafter, I joined Open University of Sri Lanka as a consultant. There I taught engineering mathematics and scientific outlook, both subjects. And later on, we formed a new party, Sialugumea, and contested from Colombo district. We were elected to parliament from 2001. Thereafter, in 2007, under the Jatika Helurumea banner, I was appointed as Member of Parliament and the Minister of Environment and Natural Resources. In 2010, I contested under UPFA and entered the Parliament from Colombo district. And I held Power and Energy Ministry. In 2013, I was given Ministry of Technology, and thereafter in 2015 we formed New Alliance and contested from Colombo district, and I was appointed as a Minister of Megapolis and Western Development. And in 2019 we formed another alliance with Samagi Jana Balabegya and contested from Colombo district, and now I am a Member of Parliament in the opposition benches.
Thank you, Mr. Ranawaka. Also, approximately when do you predict that the prices will return to normal? Because based on economic models and predictions, when do you think the economy is likely to return to stable conditions, and how much longer is the economic crisis likely to continue in Sri Lanka?
It depends on our approach and our political stability and our economic strategy. For example, like in Greece went bankrupt in 2010, and now 12 years ago, still it has been struggling to stabilize their economy. In Argentina, multiple bankruptcies. So in Lebanon, from 2018, it was very unstable then, and now it's going to bankruptcy again. And so it depends on our solution and our political stability and our economic stability. Unless otherwise, this will continue another maybe 1 decade or 2 decades time.
So is there anything that citizens in Sri Lanka is there anything that we can do to control prices at the moment? Any measures that you would suggest for the common citizen in Sri Lanka to endure this crisis?
The inflation here in Sri Lanka is very high because of two things. One side, because of the government policy, especially the president on this agricultural and the, other plantation industries. Our food production and plantation productions dropped around 50%. And the other productions and manufacturing fields also severely affected by the power crisis and the fuel crisis prevailing in Sri Lanka. So our economy is now shrinking. On the other hand, the CBSL, that is Central Bank of Sri Lanka, printed a lot of money. For example, in 2019, we printed around 30 billion rupees. It's a necessary thing, because when foreign currencies coming in, you have to print money. But after that, in 2020, 2021, and 2022, we printed a lot of money. I think 50 times more than what we had printed there in 2019. So that created a lot of money circulating there in the market and giving kind of upward thrust and inflation going up. And new Prime Minister Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe predicted and hoped that to stabilize the country and to pay the government, that expenditure and other things, we have to print another 1.5 trillion rupees within next 6 to 12 months time. So this may be, that continuing if we are not going to control our expenditure and increase our income, so that treasury should not be able to print more money. And at the meantime, we have to increase our production levels as well.
So, Mr. Ranawaka, now you were talking about the fact that they were overprinting money. Can you tell us who really was responsible in the Sri Lankan parliament for the overprinting of money? Is there any way to prosecute the guilty parties?
Actually, it is the duty of the CBSA, that is the bank, Central Bank of Sri Lanka, and the Monetary Board to stabilize the monetary policy and the that the currencies they are in the market. So it's their responsibility, and as per our Monetary Law Act, they should be held responsible for that. But the thing is that after this new president, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, was elected in 2019. December 1st, 2019, he declared what they called the economic stimulus package, so that he slashed around 40% of our government revenue. And at the meantime, his policies, for example, to stabilize the rupee there in the market, he spent around 5.5 billion US dollars to stabilize or defend the rupee there in the market. So it created serious declining of our reserve levels and giving kind of problems to us right now. And at the meantime, he stopped unilaterally, terminated a lot of foreign funded projects. For example, Japan gave us two important projects to address our public transport. One is this light railway project, and other one is railway modification project from Maradana to Pomagam. These two projects cost us around 4 billion US dollars, and other projects as well. Actually, around 300 projects being stopped or terminated by this president. That way, he simply created, that foreign currency that is being flown to the country, and that created, that scarcity of foreign currency here in Sri Lanka as well. So the final blow was this banning of chemical fertilizer and other chemical things like pesticide, weedicides, and imported seeds to Sri Lanka. That created a lot of problems there in the plantation sector: tea, rubber, coconut, cinnamon, and other exports oriented plantations, as well as the domestic production there in the paddy field. So fruits and vegetables production there in Sri Lanka created huge problem there in the people's livelihood. So one side, it's 2.7 million farmers and agricultural and industrial cultural people, plus the plantation sector. On the other hand, 2.22 million people are being fed from these production, and they also getting affected because of his policies. And at the meantime, we should stress that his policy there to address the COVID issue is also not non-scientific approach. He earlier was trying to implement by way of saying this Dhammika Paniya and other things as the sole solution to the COVID pandemic, and it created a lot of problems to Sri Lanka as well. So because of these things, Sri Lanka is now coming to this sovereign bankruptcy level. More or less, it is this new president and his government is totally responsible for that problem. But I must say that his brother, former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, actually created the roots of this problem by way of getting commercial loans from foreign countries, foreign agencies, and foreign marketplaces, and spent this money in a that without adhering to proper feasibility study, proper financial study, so that no income being generated. And also, at the meantime, he and his cronies jack up the prices, sometimes 4 times, sometimes 20 times more than the engineering estimates, and that created huge problem for the Sri Lankans and the Sri Lankan economy, and it's now currently experiencing a sovereign bankruptcy.
Mr. Ranawaka, when you were talking, I was thinking it's mainly the people at the lower strata of the economic equation that really suffer, like the farmers, the truck drivers. So, on that note, do you think that Sri Lanka, if we united as one country, we could help the worst affected people, for example, by coming up with a fund that everyone can contribute to? Because I think if everyone in Sri Lanka, each person contributed even 1 rupee to a fund geared towards helping the worst affected in Sri Lanka, we could generate enough money to save the lives of the worst affected in Sri Lanka. What are your thoughts on that?
Actually, it's a good idea, but I don't think that it won't help, that to address the issue, because now 1/3 of the Sri Lankans are, below the absolute poverty line, and also malnutrition is increased up to 20%. So within next 2-3 years, we can see the results there in our young generation, and also the that our young generation and their education been badly affected during last 3 years, and that created also a very serious problem for us. And at the meantime, a lot of rich and that able families, they are trying to send their children to abroad, and that way the Sri Lanka is now becoming kind of a human desert, right? So we have to address all these issues, but it's a good idea to help the malnutrition and the somehow to address this malnutrition issue, and to help the people that badly need their day-to-day food and other essential items.
And what are your thoughts on foreign aid? For example, right now with the Ukrainian crisis going on, a lot of countries don't want to do business with Russia. So is it the chance of Sri Lanka to jump in and start doing business with Russia, taking advantage of the fact that there is no competition in the Russian business model right now?
The thing is that actually the big countries like China and India, they can earn a lot of things from Russia-Ukraine crisis. We are a small country, and our our import sector, 60% is dependent because of the Western countries, Europe and other North America. So they simply implemented kind of sanctions against Russia. And if we are trying to exploit things from this crisis, they may impose such sanctions as well that will actually affect us in a very, very bad way. But at the meantime, that our import-export or the foreign trade is concerned with Russia. Earlier, we import things from Russia like wheat flour, asbestos, cement, and iron, and steel, and other raw materials. And at the meantime, we export tea, rubber, garments, and things like that. And the trade deficit is actually positive for us. But right now, the trade deficit is negative, and around I think 40 to 50 million US dollars deficit is there. So most people are now agitating why we are not going to buy oil from Russia. It's a very difficult task. For example, the India is buying oil from Russia because they are a big country, and they buy oil from Russia, the Ural and Baku. and then the oil being transported to the Black Sea and via Iran, and the Iranian ports transported things to India. India is a big country, and they are having a big naval force. And at the meantime, China is using their own pipelines from Siberia to feed their fuel needs and other things. But we can't do that because we are a small country. We can't use Iranian ports or other things. But only thing we can do is we can buy things from India or this China. We see various things now is in the working because of this crisis, the Ukrainian crisis, wheat flour and the other food items, the iron and steel industry and the oil and gas industry all been affected. And now we can see that Europe is also feeling very badly because of this war situation, and they are now experiencing kind of a recession, right? In US also, their first quarter is under kind of a negative growth. So they are now increasing their interest rates and other things because of the inflation that is going on in US. So all these factors actually negatively affected us. Earlier, when US, US and Western countries undergo kind of a recession and economic crisis in 2008 to 2012, it would have a kind of a positive effect on us because people got easy money there in the government and they park these monies here in Sri Lanka and other developing countries or emerging economies. Right now, the problem is that the flow is on the other hand, because the European countries and the US interest rates are going up. Then the money actually from Bitcoin, those who invested in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency also be now trying to invest in US banknotes and that European bank. So all these factors, the fuel crisis, the food crisis that is emerging, and also the financial crisis that is been there, badly affected us. So I don't think much can be gained from that Russia-Ukraine conflict for Sri Lanka.
Also, what are your thoughts on the IMF? For example, there was a rumor recently that if Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa resigns, the IMF would be more likely to help us with funds. Is that rumor true? What are your thoughts in general on the donations from the IMF to Sri Lanka during the current crisis?
IMF, we have gone to IMF, I think 16 times. I know personally in 2009, President Mahinda Rajapaksa went to IMF and we were under the IMF program. And 2016, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe sought kind of a help from IMF and we were under IMF program from 2017 to 2020. We are having this problem, that foreign currency problem. We called it balance of payment problem. IMF was created by the Western powers to address this kind of structural problem. The main thing is that when IMF is there, the other countries' financial markets are not scared to invest or lend money to this country. So it's a kind of a collateral thing for a country like this, like ours. But unfortunately, IMF is asking us to restructure our debt. It's a very serious problem because in order to restructure our debts, we have to ask our creditors to that some give us kind of a haircut. That means if you owe kind of $100 to our creditor, and we may ask them to cut it by 50%. So he or she has to, or the country or the bilateral or multilateral agency or the international financial markets, they should actually agree upon this kind of haircut. Still, we have two problems because we are our biggest, creditor right now is China. We owe them around $7 billion US, and on the other hand, we are having 13 billion of international sovereign bonds. So we are now our government is now appointed financial advisors and legal advisors to negotiate with our creditors. China is very, very reluctant to, give us kind of a haircut. Otherwise, they may give us another loan to repay their own loans. And now the one bank, they are in the tax haven from USA, going to courts about this problem, renegotiating this debt thing, because we have to pay $1,000 million to ISB. We have to settle it because Mahinda Rajapaksa got this money in 2012. So we have to repay it in 10 years time. The maturity is 10 years. So the one bank owned 25% of this money, and they went to court asking that they are not going to give us kind of a haircut. So it's a very stumbling blocks to address this issue. If any country, whether it is Japan, India, China, or the owners of the ISB loans, if they are refusing to give us kind of a haircut, give us kind of a relief, we are in a very serious position. So IMF won't help us after that. So before we go for a kind of IMF program, we have to restructure our debt. And at the meantime, IMF team was here and they left the country. Most of the people hope that we can be able to enter into a kind of agreement, the staff level agreement, so that we would have kind of a roadmap to be followed. But unfortunately, during that stay in Colombo, we would not be able to sign this agreement as well. I hope that within next 3 to 4 weeks' time, we will be able to sign this agreement. But it won't help us in this current crisis, because IMF is not going to give us a lot of money. First, we have to adhere to this roadmap to restructure our debts, to restructure our government institution, and to address this revenue expenditure deficit, and how to handle the financial and especially the fiscal position of this country. These are very, very difficult thing and very, very unpopular measures to be taken. So it's at a very huge cost, and so after that, IMF will give us kind of a program. So it's long way away. So before that, we should have a kind of an intermediate, transitional, pragmatic program to address this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Ranawaka. Also, now in the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson is experimenting with various different ways to switch from non-renewable energy to renewable energy. For example, wind farms and solar panels. I would ask you, is it possible to do the same thing in Sri Lanka, at least until prices stabilize? Is it possible, for example, to transition from fuel to something like wind farms or solar energy in Sri Lanka?
The problem is that when you are trying to establish wind farm or solar energy, you need foreign currency. So 80% of the cost totally depend on imported items like solar panels, wind turbine and things like that. So our problem is that we don't have foreign currency. We can't even import our cooking gas, right? It's around $90 million. That we are talking about 1,000 or 2,000 million US dollar investment. But when I was the power energy minister, we were able to introduce very, very few things there in the electricity, and the other related fields. The rooftop solar that was introduced in 2010 June. And now we generated around 600 megawatt using rooftop solar. I think it should be somehow we must ask the high-end customers to have their own power generation using rooftop solar, and we have to spend at least around $250 million to address and let these people to import things from various countries to have their own rooftop solar. That will solve part of the problem there in the electricity scarcity. And at the meantime, I introduced in 2012 the that charging centers for zero emission cars and other vehicles. So we have to encourage and give kind of a window to able people to import electric cars and electric bikes, so that at least they can have their own mode of transportation. But at the meantime, I must stress that we should promote, encourage public transport. In Sri Lanka, the 48% of our population, our passengers use public transport, buses, and another 4% by rail transport. The energy consumption, it's just 11%. It's just 11%. So we have to promote this area. That's why during my tenure as a megapolis minister, we promoted bus priority lanes and trying to modernize our bus service with the help of the Korean government aid, and at the meantime trying to modernize our railway network and to introduce new light railway system with the help of Japanese government. Both these initiatives being simply terminated by this president, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa. So now people are, using these public transport more and more. But unfortunately, it's a you can see that a lot of people using these things in a very, very inhuman ways, right? People now it's like in India, people are on the top of the roof of the buses, roof of the railway carriages. So it's a very bad this thing, and unfortunately we are experiencing this thing because we as a government, we as a country, we do not promote our public transport. Instead, we promote public transport, private transport with huge investment. Over 45% of our capital expenditure for this expressway network and the road network development. Not a 1% of our capital expenditure going to develop our public transport. So we should take this as opportunity to address these two issues. One, to promote the renewable energy, that harvests your energy, basically the solar energy, and to promote the public transport.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ranawaka. It was so exciting talking to you on this subject. Right now, we have to go for a short commercial break, and I'll be right back after that. So stay tuned to Politics 2.0, a summer political reveal with Mr. Champika Ranawaka on Relax Radio Beyond Frequencies. Welcome back to Relax Radio Beyond Frequencies. You are tuned into Politics 2.0, a summer political reveal with Honorable Member of Parliament, Mr. Champika Ranawaka, and he is talking to us today about his thoughts on the current economic crisis. So, Mr. Ranawaka, also, can you tell us, now you were talking about how we might be able to transition to using electric vehicles. Would you be kind enough to elaborate on that?
Actually, you know that now we are having very serious problem here in Sri Lanka. We should not promote the private mode of transportation. Instead, we should promote the public transport, especially the bus transport. That is the easiest way to address current problem. So our bus fleet is around 18,000. I think it must be properly used and properly utilized to increase our passenger thing from 48% to at least to 70%. And we should introduce new low flow buses to our bus fleet so that the middle class people can simply use these new buses instead of that importing things from India, the Tata and the Ashok Leyland buses. They are not suitable for the middle class people. It's actually built on the lorry chassis, not for the passenger transport. It's for the good transport. So we have to at least add another 5,000 buses to our fleet. You need kind of foreign currency to do that, but it is very important in this juncture, without spending money there in the private transport, petrol and diesel, we have to import buses and to address this transport issue. That is the easiest way to address this thing. And to address the railway problems, we have to run our rail thing. Now people are extensively using the rail network, and for the good transport as well, we should use the rail network properly. So we should transform these things. At the meantime, for the private mode of transportation, we should promote the zero emission vehicles, that is electric cars, and we should give kind of a time bound tariff system from I think night 9:30 to 5 a.m. that time period. Our demand is very low, so that time you can use for the charging of our electric vehicles. And at the meantime, that as a medium term thing, we should promote the gas operated buses. Sri Lanka, we know in 2011, Cairns, had 2 gas deposits there in Mana basis. Still, we are not exploit or the not upstream production is here. At the meantime, we should try to have our own upstream production there in our gas fields, so that the Ceylon Electricity Board and our bus fleet should be simply converted into a gas thing. It takes time. It takes another 3 to 4 years time. But as an immediate and easiest way to address this issue is to expand and modernize our bus fleet and rail transport network.
So all these measures that you just mentioned, Mr. Ranawaka, how long will they take to be implemented in Sri Lanka?
The immediate thing is that within 2 to 3 months, you can expand your bus network from 18,000 to at least to 23,000 to address these passenger problems, and to rail thing as well. At the meantime, I think we should introduce kind of a package to the upmarket or the high-end customers there in the electricity field, to have their own off-grid solutions. I think another 400 megawatt can be easily added to the system. And at the meantime, we should promote the wind farms also. Wind farms may take another one year to 1.5 years to that complete these projects. But immediate thing is that we should promote the solar energy and rooftop solar to feed our industries, feed our household requirements, to address this power, that scarcity problem because of this uh, scarcity of fuels that is needed to power our generators.
Now, during the protests, a lot of these youth were protesting and they were saying that they feel let down by the older generation. So, do you agree that the future of the younger generation is in the hands of the older generation? And do you agree that they could have done things differently to help young people in this country?
I fully agree with them because you know that we are now experience a different country, and our younger days we are actually using extensively using bicycles and our own that mode of transportation to our schools, workplaces, and other things. We didn't have air conditioners, even the electric fans and things like that. But now the country has been totally changed. I was able to give 100% electrification to the country in 2030. Then I was the power energy minister. So almost all the houses are now electrified, and people are having television sets, the smartphones, internet connections, and it's a smart age. That after 2010, we know that we are experiencing and we are in the fourth industrial revolution, and a lot of technologies are the disruptive technologies are that changing and evolving our day-to-day lifetime. Unfortunately, our young people now they don't have enough power, enough electricity, or the enough data and other facilities, enough transport facilities to reach their own dream. Very unfortunately, we are experiencing this thing, and we as older generation should be held responsible for this carnage.
So, how do you think that this situation could have been avoided when you look back at the last 10, 20 years in Sri Lanka? Were there any warning signs, any indicators that were ignored by the Sri Lankan government?
Yes, actually, I wrote a book in 2013. I actually warned Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa about his drive to develop this country by way of expending heavily on the infrastructure projects like ports, airports, expressways, power plants, and things like that. And at the meantime, I wrote a book in Sinhala called Alapalu Arthikaya, or Destroyed Economy, that I clearly indicated and clearly warned the general public that Mahinda Rajapaksa's so-called, this construction boom could be a very, very disastrous effect on our lives. But people simply didn't listen to us because it's there, that expressways are there, the power plants are there, the airports, ports, and various other construction, they are telling that these are marvels of engineering and things like that. They are praising Mahinda Rajapaksa for these things. And in 2016, I wrote another book about the financial crisis, and I actually submitted a cabinet paper in 2015 saying that we should address our debt issue. Because in 2013, I saw just 2 billion US dollars, that was sufficient to repay our debt. I mean, the principal part plus the interest part. But when I analyze our debt composition, for example, when Mahinda Rajapaksa came to power, our commercial loan component is around 4%. When he left the power, it's around 47%. So I warned about this 47% of commercial loan, 8%, 9% interest rate with 5 years to 10 years maturity. So when I calculated all these things, I came to kind of a conclusion that by 2023, uh, our debt repayment requirement is around 10 billion US dollars per annum. So 2013, it's 2 billion. 2023, it would be 10 billion. That is 5 times more. So our, that our GDP or the gross national product during that period, its growth has been predicted as just 20%, just 20% increase. But our debt repayment is, foreign debt repayment is 500%. So there should be a kind of a clash, kind of a explosion. That's why I warned Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe in 2015, and I wrote a book about this Mulya Agade Abhyasa. That means we are hanging on a financial cliff, right? So I warned. I was the first politician warned about this, but I know a lot of economists, a lot of financial advisors warned this government. Even 2020 March, IMF warned the Gotabaya Rajapaksa government about the unsustainability of our debts, and you are going to bankrupt. Please address this issue. But then the central bank governor and the monetary board simply declined to hear these warnings. That's why we are facing this problem. You know that they spent when the Japan government left the the government, the reserves are there around 7.2 billion US dollars, but they spent around 5.5 billion to defend rupee and fix it in around 200 rupees per dollar, right? That way we created kind of a black market, and we promoted the black market money circulation, things like Hawala and India, and our foreign remittances per month, reduced from 600 million US dollars to 300 million. So all these things happened because the president and his teams very egoistic, and they are not hear about these warnings and this. So I must say that decades ago I warned this.
Now, Mr. Ranawaka, you said that you had already warned respective parties in the government and they didn't listen, and as a result of that, this country is in the crisis that it is today. So I would ask, is there any legal way to prosecute the guilty parties? For example, can you pass a bill in Parliament, or is there an existing bill in Parliament that would force the guilty parties to resign? Is there any way we can solve this, not with violence and with protests, but the right way, the legal way?
Actually, in 2002, we introduced our Parliament, passed a kind of an act. We called it, Fiscal Responsibility Act. So, as per this act, our debt to GDP ratio plus our revenue to expenditure, the deficit should be curtailed and at a kind of a value as per the our GDP level. For example, it says by 2013 our total debt should be 60% of our GDP, and our budget deficit should be less than 5% of our GDP, right? It's there. But our treasury secretaries like P.B. Jayasundara and others simply not adhering to this Fiscal Responsibility Act. So they should be held responsible for this carnage. Not only the politicians, not only the Rajapaksa family who robbed our money, but these officials and secretaries, sometimes the chairmen, and sometimes the other senior officials should be held responsible for that. For example, most of the money, the foreign currency, being robbed there in the expressway, network development. So still the secretary to the expressway development ministry is the man who is totally responsible for this, siphon of this money from the country, right? So he's still there. PB Jayasundar is still there. They are all against this, Fiscal Responsibility Act. On the other hand, there's another thing, the Monetary Law Act that was introduced in 1950 to govern the activities of finance, this monetary board and the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. So those who actually they are in the Central Bank and the monetary board, especially those who they are in the after the 2020, should be held responsible. You can go through the Monetary Law Act. I actually pointed this thing there in the FOP as well. It clearly stipulated how to manage your monetary policy, how to stabilize your debt repayment problems, and it's a kind of a responsibility there in the monetary board and the governor himself. So they all not adhering to these laws, and they simply acted way they think is okay. For example, the last governor, Mr. Ajit Niwad Kabral, December 2021, he declared we had enough. We had enough reserves. Why should we worry? By in January 2022, he pledged we are going to repay all these loans. Right? Mr. Basil Rajapaksa also pledged this thing. They all knew the country is in the mess and country is going to be bankrupted. But they simply hide this fact and not listening to the people who are very well known about this subject, right? So that's their ego that created this problem, and they are all crooks. I must say that Mr. Cabral and Mr. Basil Rajapaksa basically are crooks. They should be arrested. They should be punished. They should be held responsible for this financial crisis that we are now facing.
On another note, Mr. Ranawaka, if I were to ask you about the COVID-19 crisis, how has the COVID-19 crisis worsened the situation in Sri Lanka?
It affected us. It's very clear now that it affected us. It actually affected to our tourism sector. It affected to this all over the world. The supply chain bottlenecks have been there, so prices have been going up and things like that. But in Sri Lanka, this president's arrogance and his egoist attitude towards how to handle this COVID thing is created a lot of problems here. In 2020 March, when COVID thing is very clear and WHO was warning every country and every government, this president is saying, what is this nonsense? We have been successfully defeated the terrorist problem. So like that, we will face this thing. Don't worry, don't panic. I handle this thing. Things like that. So after 4 days of his declaration in 2020, March 17, country simply implemented a first lockdown for 52 days. Right? Later on, in 2020 October, WHO declared that there are three, kind of vaccines were being developed, and people and the countries can now buy these vaccines from various manufacturers. But this president and his team refused to get vaccines. They invented their own thing. Some are saying that these can be solved by simply, some magical things and that magical healing people, plus kind of the drink prepared by fellow there in Kegol to address it. And even the head of government and his team believe that this so-called vaccine liquid, not vaccine, this liquid that they believe that liquid cured, we call it Dhammika Penny, that liquid cured this COVID thing, and we can attract a lot of foreign tourists to treat COVID in Sri Lanka. That's the belief. Even when this COVID thing was the second wave, that spreaded like wildfire after the garment industry catched up with this virus thing. Almost all the foreign, that big players contributed around 30 million US dollars to vaccinate their own workers. But government, especially Lalit Peeratungo, who was entrusted to do that, simply refused to use this money, right? So they simply delay the vaccination program. And also they simply sideline the medical professionals. Everywhere it's the army people, the military people from Gajaba regiment to do everything. So it created kind of a serious problem. Fortunately, the COVID thing, that simply spreading out. I think in Sri Lanka, at least 80% got this vaccine, or they contracted the COVID virus, so that they get kind of a herd immunity. Not because of Gotabaya Rajapaksa's vaccination program or the successful implementation of anti-COVID thing. Because of the vaccination program, plus the most of the people contracted, especially the new COVID variant, people got this herd immunity. That's how Sri Lanka simply became, zero COVID country, like in India, like in Bangladesh, everywhere that has been declined. But now it's there are reports that COVID new variant is now spreading. It's this president's arrogance and his that attitude and his egoist approach and his attitude towards the professionals created most of the problem for us. Unless otherwise, if we vaccinate properly, because we had a world famous vaccination capacity here in Sri Lanka, right? Our medical services are, first class medical services as far as the middle income country is concerned. So he sidelined the medical professionals, and he introduced all the non-professional people like the military people everywhere, militarization of every sector, and failed to deliver these. He appointed various generals to do various activities, but everyone, not a single person delivered. Everyone failed to deliver. That is very, that natural, because they don't know the subject. Their subject is the war or the address to security issue situation. They can't address the food production. They can't address the pandemic. They can't address the other problems. So that's the natural thing. So his arrogance, his egoistic approach, and non-scientific things he was trying to implement is simply added to this problem as well.
Also, a final question, Mr. Ranawaka. Now, when you go on the streets these days, you see the military everywhere. They're in the gas queues, you see them at checkpoints all over the place. So I think most of us in Sri Lanka are starting to feel a little disturbed. Can you please tell us what is going on with all the military outposts all over the country right now?
The thing is that Sri Lanka is a very small country. We had a war, we had a terrorist problem, and our military actually clearly defeated the terrorism in 2009. We are very grateful for that achievement. But we are now having a peaceful period here. We don't need 300,000, that military personnel here in Sri Lanka, right? We should have on the other hand, we should transform our military into a smart army, and we should expand our naval activities, because we are in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and we own a kind of a, territorial waters plus oceanic things 23 times more than our landmass. So we wanted to, we should transform our country as a naval force, right? So we should expand our navy, not the army. And army should be, transformed into a smart army. So our expenditure is very high. For example, we built a, that military headquarters half the size of Pentagon. Half the size of Pentagon. It cost around 80 billion. The per annum, its maintenance cost is 5.5 billion rupees. So this country like ours can't afford to these things, right? So we should have our own smart, army. The new war or the new terrorist problems are not coming from landmines, right? It is coming from drones. It is coming from hacking techniques and various other technological ways now the terrorists are using. You can see there in Yemen. You can see even there in Ukraine, Russia war, right? The new terrorist activities they are smartly using the smart technologies, right? So we should have our own smart army. We should transform it. This president is trying to expand the army, and also within the army, he is promoting his regiment, the Gajaba regiment, and others are being sidelined. So it's created kind of a very serious unrest among the army personnel as well. So other thing is that when some problem is propped up, he used army personnel to that address this issue. They can't do that. They can't control people because it's the duty of the police. Police know how to handle the that society's unrest and protest and other things, not the army personnel. He used army payload when Dhammika Perera's factory in 2014 in Ratupassola, the water problem propped up, and at the request of the Dhammika Perera, he sent army there, and they killed the innocent protesters. We called it Ratupaskala massacre, right? Like that, he is now using army personnel to crush the protesters. It's a very bad thing, and the consequences are very, very dangerous, because in Sri Lanka we had enough bloodbath, right? Our young people, that in 1971, in 1987, the Sinhala people, 1983, the Tamil people, even the Sahara, various Muslim, Sinhala, Tamil, young people took up arms, right? So we should address these issues in a smart way, right? We should somehow, use this army to food production, that is okay, and to address kind of a food distribution network and other things, but like in natural disaster, but not using these people to address various other issues like health issues, education issues, energy issues, and other things. So this is a very big mistake that has been made by this president, but we should change this attitude. I think our army personnel and the military, the higher ups now understand that their scope and their ability, their capacity is a different thing, and countries' problems are different, other things. So there is no match, and even the former army commander who has been appointed as chairman of Port Authority clearly says this can't be done by the military personnel. This is an administrative thing. So we should not have, we are not having kind of experience or the capacity to do that. And we should, I think, cut down our military expenditure somehow, and to somehow convert some portion of our army personnel to have our own food production and food distribution to advance our food distribution network.
Thank you, Mr. Ranawaka. We have come to the final few minutes of this interview. Now, can I ask you if you have any words of encouragement that you would like to leave us with before we conclude this interview?
Thing is that actually in every sphere, every sphere we are experiencing a very, very disturbing things. Our general publics, their livelihood been very seriously disturbed. But we should take this as opportunity. During last few decades, we get loans from the foreign countries, foreign markets, and spend this money in a non-revenue type of projects, They are very, say some engineering marvels, but they don't actually create any revenue to us. So we call it them white elephants. And at the meantime, some politicians robbed, especially the Rajapaksa family, robbed this country. That is very clear right now. During Mahinda Rajapaksa's period, from 2004 to 2020, around 2015, 2004 to 2015, around 20 billion of illicit money transfers has been happened. That has been proven by the Global Integrity Report. Clearly stated that during that period we lost around 20 billion. I think around 5.5 billion been simply siphoned off by the Rajapaksa family and their cronies. So we are now at this stage, and we can't continue like this. So we have to have a proper, that foundation for our economy right now. So grow your foods, harvest your energy, and promote your public transport. That should be the three pillars to overcome this crisis from the very, very, basic levels. And at the meantime, we should increase our revenue. We should address our expenditure issues, especially the capital expenditure should be very intelligently and without, with due regards to the, finance studies should be spent, especially in the renewable energy sector and the public transport sector and food production sector. I think within 1.5 years' time, if we are addressing these issues in a proper way and adhere to these three principles: grow your food, harvest your energy, and promote your public transport, I think we can overcome this situation, and we would be able to, again regaining our previous position as a, that most advanced and most wealthiest country in the Indian Ocean.
Thank you so much for joining us today on this program, Mr. Ranawaka. That was the Honorable Member of Parliament, Mr. Champika Ranawaka. And you guys were just tuned into Politics 2.0, a summer political reveal. This is a show where we talk to politicians about the economic crisis currently underway in Sri Lanka. So thank you so much for joining us on this program. And don't forget, this is Relax Radio Beyond Frequencies. You can call or text us on 078-524-73473. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and WhatsApp. And make sure that you download our Relax Radio app on your Play Stores and on your app stores as well. So once again, Mr. Ranawaka, it was a massive pleasure having you with us on the program today. And to everyone else tuning in, I'll see you again next Friday on Politics 2.0, a summer political reveal with Sean Adams on Relax Radio Beyond Frequencies.